What a wonderful colloquium. And Bhagat Oinam's concluding remarks really set the tone to begin this final session. Because I occasionally got a feeling of overload. And one of the things that I have always cherished, how Randhir Singh, Frank Thakurdas also, Randhir Singh used to make us relax while studying, teaching theory. So, is Gurpreet there? If you get overwhelmed by Rajiv Bhargav, Gurpreet Mahajan, Savita Singh, all that, just remember that you are in a colloquium. Just to be different and new, we coined this term when we started the Grassroots Politics Colloquium, in the early 80s. But later on, I realized what a great choice it was. We are all equals speaking. Equals speaking. Remember, students, teachers, 3 generations, 4 generations, activists, scholars, Brahmin discipline philosophy, Sudra discipline political science. None of that. Equals speaking with each other, not to each other. Speaking with each other. So please, that is the tradition of this colloquium. Some of my most favorite students have been my sharpest critics, some of them sitting here. And I have learned from them. And so that is the first thing I wanted to say, relax. While doing philosophy, philosophy is not a mystery. Theory is not, my dear Hilal, asking you for training. Training is not research methodology training, sorry. The first lecture I gave in research methodology is to believe that you will be your own maker of research methodology. Design your own research methodology. What struggles we have gone through, we are sharing. That is the course. Okay? All tortuous, all those techniques and survey method, this, that, all that. And the latest SPS is outdated now. There are so many new programs. No, R is also 5 years old. Something else. Anyway, so research methodology is only sharing our tortuous experience to enable you, not to disable you. Not to train you in such a way that you are overloaded, overburdened, constantly trying how Gurpreet Mahajan will give me A. No.
It was very rare.
So, first, that is my first point. Conversations among co-equals and feel relaxed. Doing philosophy should be a pleasure, as Bhagat Oinam put it so beautifully. It should be a pleasure. You suddenly feel that you are alienated. Learning something either in Berkeley, Oxford, Harvard, or JNU, or wherever. So that's my first point. Sorry, can I take 5-7 minutes? Okay. Second, Indian. I think it has become very clear that Indian, here is an author, there are 2-3 authors here whose book titles are contested something, contested homeland, contested representation. I think this grassroots politics colloquium, creative theory tradition has made them realize that and push that. All these are contested. There are various viewpoints. India of Ashoka, India of the Mughals, India of the British, India before 47, India after 47, the Republic of India, which was Yogendra Yadav's specific point. The Republic is being dismantled. So, which India you are talking about? So, from India, of India, you don't need to be an Indian passport holder to be an Indian, because there can be multiple citizenships, multiple passports today, and so on. Therefore, this Indian should not be reduced to any one concept, any one geography or culture or religion or anything. It is just a heuristic thing. I study Chinese history, philosophy, Chinese political thought. I know most of the books talk about Han, Confucian, so only Han, whereas 92% are Han and 8% are non-Han. But 8% occupies 60% of China's territory. You see? So therefore, so when we say Chinese, immediately a creative theorist would say, which China? The inner China within the Great Wall? Or Manchuria, Mongolia, Yunnan, Xinjiang, Tibet, all this. So Republic of India is not Varanasi to Kannauj. And I'm so glad we had people from all over. And therefore Mithila texts or Vanarasa texts are as important as the Tamil texts, the Odia texts, Kannada texts. So even textual studies should go to many different languages. So that is my second point. India, don't feel constrained. Make it an open understanding of India. I grew up as an Odia child using Bharat. We used India much later when we learned in English. But suddenly now Bharat is replacing the concept of India with a very heavy connotation. That amazes me, because in many Indian languages, Bharat was a very simple term. You see? Now, therefore, what is the context of a terminological change? That you will understand. Otherwise, Indian political thought, Indian political theory, Indian politics, whatever. So this India is a heuristic, utilitarian. For convenience sake, we use Indian, just as Chinese, Greek, etc. European is so many different kinds of things there. That's my second point. So don't feel overloaded again by Indian in the Indian political thought, Indian political theory. Now to theory. I think, as I said, do theory, take it easy. I have had many students who are today important scholars and theorists. When they began with their work, they were totally flabbergasted by the amount of theoretical challenges that they were confronting from us, as well as we were carrying also a lot of baggage from the Western, because most of us were trained in the West, you see. So I think today, and if creative theory has any one single function, is to liberate you from those constraints, that there is a canon of theory. I'm sorry, we had a discussion on that. There is a Western canon, there is an Indian canon, and so on. There are two simple things. And this is again, a very important point just a little while ago Gurpreet made. What is the distinction between a view and a theory, statement of theory? And Hilal also said something to that effect. It has to address only two things. Research methodology, forget about that. Descriptive, explanatory, evaluative, normative, please forget about that. There are many more than that. Many. And evaluative and normative are not the same. I mean, there are many discussions on this. Now, therefore, and here and now, I don't like that. Whether you are addressing to questions here and now, I think Yogendra was misunderstood. And you are likely to be misunderstood also, Hilal. The question is, even if you are talking about an utopia, a visionary future, is it making sense? So making sense of a thing, a happening, an event, a process, a calamity or a achievement, making sense of something which you can communicate and which not only in your inner circle, which can also be understood by wider circles. That generality, that is the first test. So theory is a general statement on a phenomenon. You are making sense of something, making an argument. You see, I used to tell all my students, when you have a thesis, come and let me know, discuss it. So that is it. If you have a theoretical statement about some problem. So that is one. And secondly, problem. And this we learn from Randhir Singh. What is the problem which is bothering you? He used to always ask when somebody is wanting to do something, write something. What is so the problem? And a statement or a theorizing or that can be even a description. Somebody cannot describe a phenomenon, you are describing, saying that this is it. These are the characteristics of the thing. This is the phenomenon. So the problem and making sense of that problem so that others can get that insight, get some cue to do something about it, to change it. That's why when Dhananjay emphasized that theory has to be transformative, I mean in one way or the other, change for the better or something. It be better from one viewpoint, that may be worse from another viewpoint. You see? Therefore, better doesn't mean linear, in a singular view of the better. You see? But it is making sense. Somebody is taking advantage. My analysis of Odisha's caste dominance, Karan Brahman dominance, BJP has taken the most advantage of it and has designed its politics. Was that my aspiration? I didn't want that. But they wanted to, oppose this Karan Brahman domination in Odisha. And so they would go to the tribals, put up non-Karan, non-Brahman, non-caste, non-Brahmin leaders in power and so on. And I feel very sad about it. So what I'm saying is your theory can have a positive effect, can have a positive or negative depending on what. So please make theory easy, please. Gurpreet Mahajan, make theory easy.
Don't terrorize people.
This is my second point. My last point. What is creative? And I mean, all of you have been hearing about it for years, and I will only say, even now many people say, they mean creative, they say critical. because they still can't capture. Please understand, creative is critical plus. It has to be critical. And please remember what is the genealogy of this discomfort, and step by step. I grew up just critiquing the dominant. Okay, so everybody has to study the dominant system, systems theory, this, that. So some of us coming from Ranveer Singh tradition, we wanted to critique. Okay, then the next stage was some people said, no, critique is not enough, alternative. We had a journal, alternative, CSDS, very important journal. Alternatives, plural, and so on. Then some of us said, look, just as critique is making the reference point the dominant, alternative is alternative to the dominant. Can we go to the people or history or, the base itself and find some meaning out of that and do something new? So, critical plus, not only critique of capitalism, critique of feudalism, critique of caste and patriarchy, but something more than that, so that you enlarge the realm of freedom, enlarge the liberation process, and achieving something new. So creative in creating something new, that is more of liberation, more of freedom. Okay, that is the important thing about being creative. Then there are methodological issues and so on. And then looking at history as history of creativity, of humans, of civilization, that creativity is confronted by constraints on creativity, so that individuals, groups and regions are not able to realize their full potential, full creativity, full creative capacity. And there are two kinds of constraints. Epochal, a whole epoch gives some very powerful constraints. And then sphere concept, women sphere, caste, religion, minority religion, sexuality, there are sphere constraints and epochal. This is the capitalist epoch. You may decide what are the large forces in the world which are constraining. So looking at history and looking at humans as creative beings, constantly struggling for realizing their creative potential. As humans, groups, regions, many collectivities and so on. Therefore, again, take creativity easily. So it's not that, yes, artists, poets are creative, but what is that? That newness and sense of freedom, that they can create something new by overcoming some constraints. That is what we want to generalize in every sphere. So these were the 3 points I wanted to share. Overload problem of this theorizing, Indian, and then you are creative. Everyone is creative. And so that feeling of liberation and capacity has to inform this exercise, which is extremely important as a human experience. I just want to record my feeling of extreme discomfort, the extent of disconnection from grassroots of this colloquium in the recent years. I know there are constraints. We have no money. We can't get people from the grassroots to dialogue with us. I'm glad we have, thanks to JNU, we have Northeast friends among intellectuals. But there is no practicing, practitioners in the field who are coming here to dialogue with us. You had some in some sessions earlier, but that is becoming rarer and rarer. And please remember, somebody said, learn from the masses, one of the speakers today. So that little methodology that we had, please don't miss that, please. Well, thank you very much. Now, I'm so sorry. I thought I will share these feelings of mine, my bhavo, before really asking, in what order should we have? The same order? Oh, thank you.
Very interesting to see.
So, and how many minutes?
5 minutes each.
5 minutes each or so that other people can come
Yeah,
in.
more
He can share his impressions.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
have any
So,
questions-
Vivek Yadav, to begin with. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this really thought-provoking colloquium. I learned a lot. I just want to raise perhaps 3 sets of questions. I'll say something about each of them by way of a preliminary answer, but I want to leave them more or less open-ended. These are all questions, issues that I think came up during our discussions over the last 3 days. The first is what sort of an attitude should we have towards Western political theory? Here, and this is not really my own view, this is also my view, but this is not only my own view, this is essentially coming from Sudipta Kaviraj. Kaviraj suggests that we cannot live entirely within the terms of Western political theory, but nor can we do entirely without it. So it's a sort of strange sort of situation that we find ourselves. Why can't we do without it? Well, because modern politics is made possible in India by a set of institutions that were imported here from the West. And they brought with them a certain kind of understanding, which we need to make sense of, in the sense that we need to read the theorists from whose works those institutions and their presuppositions arose. So, for example, if you want to make sense of the modern state, you have to read Hobbes. If you want to make sense of the modern concept of property, there is no way around, you cannot get by without reading Locke. So you have to climb this indefined ladder, but once you've learned to climb it, you must also learn to kick it away. Because it's essential, it's an essential prerequisite to make sense of Indian politics, but you can't make sense of Indian politics entirely within its terms. And this brings me to the second point that I wanted to make, which is what should we, second set of questions, which is how should we understand the task of political theory? Because in our discussion, I think, especially when we said that we should look at multiple sources of sort of pre-theoretical understanding, we should diversify our material with which we theorize. I think there's a danger, but that's entirely true by the way, but I think there's a danger in that, in losing sight of what is peculiar about the task of theorization. Any practice requires a pre-understanding of that practice by the practitioners. Right? They use concepts. They have a pre-understanding of what they are doing. But it's a pre-understanding in the sense that it is oriented towards solving practical problems. And so theory, of course, must arise from this pre-understanding, but it cannot stay content with the pre-understanding. So what are the tasks of political theory? As I see them, I can point to 3, and I'm sure that others here might have other ideas. First is conceptual refinement. Practitioners use concepts, but those concepts are often unclear, they're vague, they're polyvalent, And the first task of political theory is to define concepts more sharply, define them. Right? Second is the task of systematization. And here, I would like to bring an example. Many people here mentioned Gandhi. Right? I think we are fortunate that we have a modern tradition of Indian thought that comes from people who were also politicians. But it's important to remember, especially with people like Gandhi, right? Perhaps not so much with people like Ambedkar, that Gandhi was not a systematic thinker. Right? His thinking was often an attempt to make sense of what he was doing. This is not to say that he was not a profound thinker, he was, but the task of systematizing his thought falls on to scholars of Gandhi. Right? So we need to, but we must take from the pre-understanding of the practitioners, the task of systematizing that understanding is that of theory, essentially. And the third task is that of excavating the immanent ideas that are implicit in practice, right, and articulating them as sharply as possible. Right? I think this applies especially to the theory of democratic societies, because democracy is something, it's a practice in which an ideal is always immanent. Right? If you lose sight of that ideal, much of democratic functioning stops making sense. The third set of questions that I have, an issue, I think Chetna, I don't think she's here, but I think on the first day she raised this. She warned against the danger that if we are doing Indian political theory, then aren't we locking ourselves into the Indian context? Right? Aren't we flirting with the danger of provincializing theory? And so the question is, if we want to do Indian political theory, what kind of universality should we aspire to? Or should we not aspire to a kind of universality? And I think here there is, as I can see it, there is one false universality. I'll give you an example by way of anecdote, if you'd allow me. I worked with a political theorist in my training. She's one of the great democratic theorists in the world. I told her that I wanted to do Indian political theory. I wanted to theorize Indian politics. And she said, well, I've already done that. I've already theorized democratic politics. Why do you need to do it anew? And she was referring to her work, which does not even have a footnote on India. Right? And this idea that the task of political theory is to explain politics everywhere. So if you're doing democratic theory, then your theory must explain the democracy everywhere. I would like to think that this is a kind of a false universalism, in the sense that that kind of an aspiration is misleading, because unless you have global politics, until then you can't really have global political theory. Political theory must explain a particular practice, but that does not mean that it cannot have anything to say to practitioners of politics elsewhere. I think only someone who knows their own society well can learn from another society. Right? Only when we learn to theorize our own politics well. And that's not about provincializing political theory, that's just doing political theory, period. So these are the three questions that I want to raise.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. So Irfan Para and then Varsha. Yeah. And then Rakesh Ranjan Das. Yeah. Irfan.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a bit challenging for me to say a lot of things at the end of the day. But as we come to the conclusion of this 2-day highly intensive deliberations, it seems to me that a lot of questions have been raised rather than sort of answered at least for me. To begin with, I must say that it's very important for any political theory, whether it's Indian, Western, and Chinese, to sort of start contemplating with the problem. What's the problem that political theory, any political theory is seeking to answer? I think the biggest problem in the 20th century, as sort of elaborated by theorists coming from, let's say, black theorists, for example, Cornel West or any other person, they said that the biggest problem for political theory in the 20th century is to sort of have a comprehensive understanding of race. Coming from there, I would say that the biggest problem for any political theory, whether Indian, Western, or Chinese, is to sort of deliberate with the question of diversity and pluralism, or come specifically with the question of inter-community relations. I think that it's very important for the 21st century, and rather I would say that the 21st century will be known by how to resolve conflicts between majorities and minorities, because as we come to the 21st century, we have come to the point that majorities or minorities are permanent in nature and character. This is to borrow from one of the leading scholars on Africa, Mahmoud Mamdani. So he argues that modernity has fixed communities as permanent majorities and minorities, and it's here the question of pluralism. How do we negotiate with the idea of diversity or toleration? That has attained more salience. So the task for any political theory in the 21st century, whether Indian or any other political theory, is to provide us with a comprehensive solution to the problem of diversity, religious pluralism. That's one point that I had to sort of bring to the conversation. The second is, I think it came up repeatedly in the conversation, is that we need to look at the history and genealogy, the concept. That's a very important point. For example, if we look at Western political theory, let's talk about Western. Marshall Hodgson or Michael Burnell have sort of provided us the trajectories, the shifts, the mutations that West itself has gone through. And Marshall Hodgson makes the point that at least 3 mutations have, West has gone through at least 3 mutations. And we have come to the point that those people who have contributed to making what West is today, at least in philosophy, in medicine, in literature, in philosophy, these are the people who find their names at footnotes of the Western civilization itself. That takes me to 2 more points that we need to take a bit cautious. We have to be a bit cautious whenever we are doing any political theory. One is with respect to exclusiveness and othering that any political theory develops, the tendencies as it grows. One more example would be Jürgen Habermas, the person who have been reading and studying in the classroom, is someone who talks about deliberative democracy, but it's very surprising and shocking that what he had to say about the conflict in Middle East in the past 1.5 years. My last point would be about sort of that question also came up, the question of universals, and that any political theory seeks to develop. It's not a bad idea to develop universals, but what happens is that we develop universals that perform a lot of political functions behind the back. One example could be the whole discourse of global war on terror. I am not one who would say that terrorism is a fictitious ghost created by the Imams of Orientalism, Bernard Lewis, and Samuel P. Huntington. I don't say that. Or for that matter, another universal of human rights. But as sort of students of political science, if we critically evaluate those universals, it appears to us that these universals, for example, human rights, humanitarian intervention, global war on terror, these are actually performing a lot of political functions behind the back. So we need to be critically we need to be cautious of the universals that we develop, the problems that we have. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Practice of Charcha, when they would sit and they would just discuss about the Shiva's Kuruvam, and this practice is so vital in making them imagine themselves as a community. All of them start addressing each other as Shiv Bhai and Shiv Behan. So they are a community, not differentiated by caste, religion. In fact, I'm told that they also go to Muslim women and they would ask them that please join us. Why? Because then, there is an anecdote that the Muslim woman would then say that no, we do have only one Allah, we are monotheist, we can't take any other God as God. So they are like, no, you can have your Allah only, you just need to tell them Shiv and just take them as one Guru because we just want to have one Guru. And so these practices like Charcha, and for that matter, I'm reminded of these practices of Kirtan. How Kirtans have been so much vital in, making women come together. And also, they are very much political because they are very much reflective. These religious practices, so-called religious practices, are so much reflective of sociological realities because you need to see the undercurrents of economical things playing out there. How certain religious practices were very much, prominent in certain times, and how economics changes are also fueling certain changes in the regional practices of how religions are being practiced and realized. So these are just some fuzzy comments I would put on, and I would like others to come in maybe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rakesh Ranjan Das. After that, I will request Suranjita and Ritusha.
Rakesh doesn't seem to be here. Rakesh is not here.
Rakesh is here or not?
So it's fine, I'm okay.
No?
No, listening, I will. As you come later.
Okay, then Suranjita.
Please.
Professor Monty, we have a young gentleman who wants to come in.
Sorry?
Later on. Later on.
Oh.
It will, somebody wants to speak later on.
We will
Open it.
make it open in another 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll just be very brief. I thought this colloquium has actually addressed the issues that were lost last colloquium. So it's brought the idea of political and to this table, the most contentious debates, the role of theory. So we have understood theory not in terms of a conceptualization of rigid concepts or universalities. Moving beyond that, we go to theory as a method or a pedagogy or a process. I think that was what we initially looked in creative theory. When we're looking at implications of creative theory, we're giving a lot of space to open debates, contested ideas, and not coming up with closed spaces, including non-spatial solidarity. So it will cross constituencies and territorial boundaries and geographies. It would be something like intercontextuality, intersectionality, intercommunicative, and so on and so forth. So we are going to give privileged multiple perspectives, viewpoints, and examine many of the concepts on the basis of how they have been embedded in our consciousness, and also engage with the collective consciousness. The curiosity to know, to ask a question, even if they are not articulate enough or not systematized. I think the political capability to contest politics of knowledge or maybe politics of space, or including the power relations which have been always exercised in such a way that you don't contest power relations. They're hierarchical, asymmetric, but not necessarily exploitative, because they're persuading and appealing and they manufacture consent. So they're very subtle, and this is where creative theory has always found a space to deliberate, get into the dialogue, engage with, look at vulnerabilities. Many of the experiences cannot actually be conceptualized. So maybe I don't hurt, but I feel hurt. So I don't hurt. I feel hurt without being hurt. How do I conceptualize that? I don't really live, but I have thoughtfully lived and experienced living this lived experience. I am reminded of Mary Matsuda, who says what black women have gone through. The fear in the gut and pulse rate increases, you have heartbeats, breathlessness, psychoanalytical trauma, and fear psychosis. How do I conceptualize this kind of an exploitative relation? So there are experiences which we do not have to find concepts to exactly give us a very tautological or dictionary meaning. I mean, there can be narratives, they can be described and contested, yet they have meanings. I think contests always have given meanings to those concepts. So it is very important, and in many of the discussions I could sense that has come up. So the traumatized experience one goes through cannot be theorized. I'll submit to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ritusa. Where are you?
Here. Thank you, Professor Mohanty. It's a tall task. I don't know if I'm up to it. But what creative theory does every year is to give a shot in the arm. And I must say that it doesn't fall short even this year. As someone who constantly struggles with finding a space in terms of this whole politics of knowledge production, where does one belong to, for instance? What disciplinary boundary best defines one's trajectory? I think I constantly grapple with that question. Every year, every month, every day. Every moment I'm supposed to pick up a pen, metaphorically, and write, because we all write on the laptop now. But it's a question of who am I when I'm trying to reach a certain kind of discipline. So this year edition of creative theory, deliberating collectively on whether, how, and why should we do Indian political theory has again brought forth a lot of questions for me to go back to, and I'm much enriched, I must say. I think the last session, Jigyasa, presented a very creative way of looking at the emotive capacity that we keep trying to gauge in different conceptual categories that we uncover while we are trying to make the sense of the political. So I will understand emotions better, perhaps, in that domain of the international that I try to look at. Thank you to her. Similarly, I think each speaker that I have had the opportunity to listen to has brought forth a question, and I'm going to just flag a couple of them because I think I've made some sense of how to approach those questions during the course of these 2 days. One is when we are trying to do Indian political theory, because I think everybody is on that page that there is essentially, this endeavor, collective endeavor. How are we doing it? Because everyone was talking about or referring to, in some sense or the other, about the universal. And if the universal is not up to the mark, if the universal is hegemonic, if the universal is sharply, embedded in the contradictions that need to be overcome, challenged, what you would want to do with those contradictions coming from different vantage points, notwithstanding. How do we do it? There is a supposition that we create a pluriversal because the concept note also reads that. One of the speakers here, Dhananjay, referred to transversal. Now, there is a certain tension. The transversal is the opposition or the contradiction or the cutting across of these layers of exploitation, contradictions, marginalizations. And pluriversal is the acceptance that there exists a different world. You make what you make of it. So if I want to do, suddenly I'm going to look at Chinese political theory. I mean, it's not sudden, but it's sudden when you look at a long trajectory of intellectual endeavors. So for the last 20 years, 15 years, we've been trying to study Chinese political theory. Then there is this sense of training that you have in terms of Western political theory. You also have Indian political theory. these are pluriversal categories, and how shall they talk with each other? I mean, borrowing from Professor Mohanty's, reminder / admonition / what you will make of it. They talk with each other. And I think when I was presenting, there was a question raised to me that, how do, for instance, Tianxia speak to Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam? The whole world is one, kutum, family, community, and Tianxia, where there is a sense of how you look at the world, keeping yourself, the self, in the center. So how do these concepts then interact with each other? Is there a dialogue possible? So I think the tension is also about making the concepts speak with each other if we choose the category of pluriversal. And there I think we might find a lot of contradiction, a lot of challenge, because we might essentially be actually trying to do the transversal bit of it. We might actually want to replace that, what we have found in this pluriverse, with something more co-constitutive of each other, rather than contradictory of each other. So I think that's a very, very important, huge challenge to recognize collectively. The other thing is, yesterday I think there was this question which was rather provocatively put, duly recognized as provocative, that why should we bother about theory at all? So this thing that, do we need to do theory? Shouldn't praxis inform theory? I mean, all these questions that have been asked since millennia, since the time we've been trying to grapple with these questions. I think most of us who tried to deliberate together were on the page that theorization is important. But then how do you do that theorization? Whether what Hilal suggested earlier, let's take theory lightly, and Professor Mohanty agreed, let's find the theory in the mundane. I think that's also a very big challenge. That's a very big challenge. It's not just about following certain canons as to what theory means. In all our textbooks and in all the reference books, and how we studied theory through classrooms, and then through notes, and then through exams, and then what is accepted in the epistemic market as theory. It's a tortuous road. And where do we stand in terms of then co-creating this creative theory space? That still remains a very, very big challenge as to how we do it. So, but I won't take much time, but thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we should get the two conveners now to make their statements and then open up. Okay? Manindra.
I kept advising to speak.
3-4 small points. First, I think we have been struggling to think what is creative theory, and last 10-12 years, this question comes again and again. And friend like Ajay would say that, well, tell me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what is your canon? And we keep avoiding that question. And now I think probably creative theory is a movement. It's not a theory as yet, and a movement is open. It's open space where we debate, discuss, and there are creative tensions that we resolve, right from how do we engage with Western material, how do we engage with our own things, the tradition, what is tradition, right from there to how do we engage with people's perception of politics. I and Ajay, we are planning to have a project in which we want to talk to the politicians, top politicians, to ask them what do you mean by theory. Or I and Hilal want to have a project on talking to two people and two set of people who are extremely communal, to talk about how do they look at the other community, so that we can actually navigate how people are thinking. So it's a movement. It's a movement of engaging with all possible resources. I think this conference has made it very clear, and it should be clear for all time to come, that we should not go back to these primitive questions again and again. 3 primitive questions. 1, East and West. Nobody is bothered about it today. Nobody says East is East and West is West and they never can meet again. I don't think we are saying that. I think it's now we are agreeing that we have to engage with all. Second is this idea of post-colonial. Ranveer Singh used to ask, how long will you remain post-colonial? Get rid of that now. So let's accept that it's a history, it has thrown certain challenges, we have to meet that. But post-colonial also has this notion that you always have a master there. It has created a master-slave relationship. We have survived that probably. And our earlier generation of academicians probably suffered more than we are suffering from that. And future generation will not even remember probably what was there. So that cognitive damage we can take care of. And the language issue. It's quite irritating when somebody says that the moment you say raise the language issue, it's a Hindi issue or Hindu issue or caste issue. I think there are nuanced debate going on that. Fortunately, we have formed a group now, and soon we'll come out with a book. We are working on that. On the language issue, we have invited top intellectuals from all over the country, from different languages, to reflect on that. And we had a couple of meetings. And I think we are on agreement that let's not connect language with identity, and let's not connect language with kind of history of that kind. So like Urdu, why should it become a Muslim language? I don't understand. Akhlaq Sahib is not here. He would say Persian has been always Indian language in a way. It has contributed so much to Persian. India has contributed so much to Persian. I think we have to get rid of that language thing. And when I'm called language jihadi, so let me respond to that. Jihad is a very positive thing. Yes, we have to fight. If you are oppressed, we have to fight. I mean, I remember JPS Oberoi, who told me once that I will not go to a meeting where I'm invited as a Sikh. Because if I will speak for Sikh, then who will speak for humanity? I said, you should speak for Sikh as long as Sikh community is suffering. But if speaking for Sikh is speaking for humanity, then you must stand up and say something. So I think there is no problem with that. So therefore, let's get rid of that idea now. So second thing I witnessed in this, in a way, this Creative Theory Colloquium has also been a part of my research project on Indian intellectuals. I want to now theorize something about Indian intellectuals. What are the problems are they facing? I have been thinking about it, and since it is a kind of participatory observation, so I would say that, I think what colonialism did to us, we lost the connection between our being, thinking and knowing. We started thinking that theory is something outside. We have to learn it, practice it, then demonstrate that. What Yoganji said, that you would drop some names, and I do not say JNU has this habit, probably all intellectuals has this habit. I remember once I and Professor Mohanty and Professor Randhir Singh, along with Professor Chandok, were going for a cup of tea to Ujjwal Singh's house. And Randhir said, Neera, I will have to get a translator to understand what you write. So Neera said that, but you can understand me, but whatever she told about me, look at Maninder, what he writes, I don't understand. And Randhir Singh's answer was very nice. He said that, well, if he does not write like that, you will not take cognizance of him. That is the point. I think we are trapped in that. The university community is trapped in that. But what is happening today is very important. I think there is an ontic mutation going on. There is an elite transition happening. Let's acknowledge that. University system, within university system also, there is an elite transition, at least the public universities. Private universities, I'm sure, the elites are moving to the private universities. In our universities, the audience has changed. For long, JNU has been opposing me whenever I talked about Hindi, that we should not ignore Hindi students. If you could please remember that debate that happened. And that is one of the reasons why I started writing in Hindi. We ignored that. Instead of training them in language, in fact, we humiliated them for language. I have experience of many of the students coming and crying in front of me that since I don't know English, I'm humiliated in JNU. So that, I think, is now changing. So what Amit Shah said, it may be a political statement, but actually it's a very, very concrete statement coming out from reality, that there's a change of the elite. And this new elite is not bothered about your language. And how do you deal with them is a real question. So this disconnection between being, thinking, and knowing, I think we need to take that seriously and get into a new kind of engagement. And that is where we have to think of a new theory. because the theory that we have been doing was an elite exercise. I mean, if somebody says that human beings are theory-building beings, then somebody says that India does not have a political theory. Does it mean we are not humans? I mean, this is a very surprising statement. So that I think we need to understand, and therefore I think that theory is an exercise that everybody does. As Professor Mohanty said, we all are doing that. How do we do it is a question, but without theory probably we can't operate. Therefore, let us respect for the theory created by tribal community also. Theory created by Dalit community or the girl who has created theory. And then make that a subject of negotiation. That's how we can evolve better theory. So that is one thing. Second, on the Indian thing, one more thing, that dialogue. I think this elite transition is reflected in the frustration of elites also. What we witnessed here on the first day was also a frustration of previous elite, who thinks that system is being dismantled, who thinks that everything is in crisis. Other people are saying that system is being built for the first time. We are being independent for the first time. So therefore, we really need to negotiate them and dialogue with that. How do we dialogue? Where do we dialogue? I think there are 3-4 spaces that Hilal has been talking about. Literature captures things much earlier. I don't know if Professor Akhlaq Ahmed here is or not. He dedicated a poetry book to this group, Creative Theory Group.
Really?
Yes. And that in 2012 he published that. And the title is very amazing, Sochne Pe Pehra Hai. And you must read that, because I wrote in that what Andhere Mein Mukti Bodh was seeing in Andhere Mein, Akhlaq is seeing in Ujale Mein. So how there is a problem with that? So probably they capture things much earlier. 2012, imagine. That time he was saying that things are coming, things are problematic. So therefore literature could be one area. Second is this movement. Somebody raised this social movement issue. The political movements. I think Varsha's idea of this new religious movement, what kind of issues are they throwing? We need to engage with that. Probably theory now, if you want to build theory now, you cannot rely on the resource that you get from the West, whether the text or whatever. I think you have to really engage with people. How are they engaging with their own life? How are they connecting their being, thinking and knowing? And there we have to intervene and connect from there and create some theory from there. And last thing, if I give you 1 minute. What is Indian? I think we have to really rethink about this Indian, because we become very defensive when we say what is Indian. One is the universal. Are we not universal? I think I remember Randhir Singh when he used to say the relation between universal and particular. He said that there is a signature of part on the whole and signature of whole on the part. And therefore, if the parts are changing, the whole is also changing. As the whole is changing, parts are also changing. So it's an emergentist universal, constantly emerging. And in that, I just want to add one thing, that Indian is a fuzzy category.
Is that?
Fuzzy category.
Fuzzy category.
I mean, my village is also India. Delhi is also India. My villager may have the idea of theory exactly like yours. When I go back to my village, all my theories fall flat. I can't explain anything to them. It takes time to convince them that for 30 years I have been only trying to understand society. Because they think I don't understand anything. Actually, I don't understand anything. Which means that there are layers and layers. And how these layers are connected, that is important. And therefore, it's not only India. In fact, now our group, which works on mapping knowledge and practice in India, our next stage is mapping knowledge and practice in Asia. Because it's not that there is no India, but also there is an Asia and they are connected. And therefore, we have to really see in terms of layers of that. And then we can see how Indian political theory would mean. Not fixed identity that Indian with garv se ko Indian hai, but connected with everything. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Manin. Let me just look at
the number of years that we've spent on discussing everything under the sun from a creative theory perspective. Yet, if you want to know, if you want to have a well worked out creative theory, I would desist from saying that we have one or we want one in any final sense. It is precisely because we take theory ontologically. We don't want to construct knowledge systems. When I say we are taking it ontologically, is to say that we just look at life, how life is going, what are we doing, what are our practices. There's one definition which I sort of use for my own work that I do, is that all social theory is about our social, political, and economic practices. Sometimes, say in Marxist theory, the economic practices are theorized and you have a class theory. Sometimes social life, cultural life is theorized, and then you get a number of different other kinds of theories. But the fact of the matter is that we all do, in one way or the other, some sort of systematization. I quite remember, I like Montaigne as one of the philosophers whom I read. You know what he used to do every day at the end of the day? He's a big French philosopher. He was very influential. He would take a stock of what he has done or he had done. And the book that came out, which is known as Montaigne's philosophy, are nothing but jotting down dincharya, things that he did every day on a daily basis. So the common sense of making life is a very important theoretical activity. So most of us, at that level, most of us theorize. We make sense of our experiences. Aaj kya hua? You know, even children do it. If they've been scolded, for example, by the parents, at the end of the day, they do remember, this has happened today, what I should not do next day. The second thing I want to just bring in, because I want to build another argument, is that not only at this easy level of systematizing your experience, bringing unity to it, and then making some sense of it so that it guides your action, I have watched a lot life and activities of animals and birds on Discovery channels. This was a passion that I had for a very long time. And I've learned so much from them that I've learned from ourselves as human beings. You know, you look at the number of birds who make their nests. Technically perfect nests they make, so that their progeny, their children can survive nature. And all of them have a very different way of building it. If I have to theorize the ontic multiplicity, I can theorize from there, because I theorize from life. All right? This is the second thing, that we are always in a situation of perfection, imperfection, multiplicity, and also some sort of universalization. That's also a theoretical activity, philosophical activity. So why I'm saying all of this is because creative theory is a theory that is in process. It goes on. Today we know that there are 3 or 5, 6 things, important elements. You know, I consider a very important aspect of creative theory, which I call interpretation. Now, interpretation is not some simple act. Interpretation is a whole range of understanding, of executing understanding, of moralizing. Our ethical lives depend on these theories of interpretation, because interpretation takes life, our being, far more seriously than knowledge can ever. Any systematic form of knowledge can ever make sense of it. That is to say, we theorize from life. The third thing that I want to say is that even though there are patterns, even though there are learned systematic ways of thinking, new things can never be stopped from being attempted. And it is also part of the same process. Right? Like, I'm a poet, I write poetry. I write poetry in Hindi. There are very many historical reasons, personal reasons why I came to poetry and why I'm writing in Hindi. These are all very important decisions that one has made as a creative theorist. Like writing in your own language. Manindra was talking about language. Language is not the one that I speak. Language is life world in which I do everything, including writing, poetry, fiction, doing art. That's what language basically means. It's a Weltanschauung, that is the German word for it. So when you start writing a poem, you do not know which is going to be your last sentence. That's creativity. It's functioning like your breath. So this is the depth of our activity as creative theorists. We will respond to situations. We will work within a pre-given structures of language and history and consciousness, but we will constantly be doing new things. It is because of we do new things that we remember these things and we take them as our pretext within which new texts are created. So this is the creative space within which we are working as theorists, and anybody who's expecting from us to give a theory in a positivistic sense and all that is perhaps will be disappointed. And what are the goals? Like, all civilized societies, they've had certain telos, as it is called. A beautiful life, a life where there is a just life where people have friendships, eudaimonia. When I read Aristotle, I feel extremely happy that he theorized from not something that was outwardly, but it was very human. We seek friends, we seek community, we seek good state, we create good state. All social contract is self-creation, isn't it, of a particular historical community and time. So this is what creative theory is. At least this is how I understand. And thanks, sir, because of the criticism that you made, I want to sort of till the 12th Creative Theory Colloquium, we always had a panel where we actually invited artists. We invited people who write literature to reflect on their practices. That's what it's all about. And they came. Very important people came and spoke, and we were all very happy, enthralled. Professor Mohanty used to be the first one to say it was a wonderful session and all that. But in last 2 years, we've been thinking about doing a little bit on theory. Whether we have a theory, we are Indians, we do many things we do which Westerners also don't do. You must understand that we have done so much more than they have done, or certain things they do, we do not do. All kinds of differences are there. And through binaries and dichotomies, we simply gut the project. Binaries are like, incinerating kind of a situation within which we burn our whole creativity and our enthusiasm to create something new. So we've had kind of a flowing interdisciplinary dovetailing. As far as the grassroots people who have not been able to come is really the money part. We've not been able to invite, and in Delhi it's becoming difficult. Unless we shift the venue, it will be a bit difficult. Earlier we had a structure which was different from IIC. From IIC we received some complaint yesterday. There was a stampede over here. They're not used to stampede, and as you know, it's an elitist place, no doubt about it. But we began to collaborate. At that time, we were not creating stampede. People were sort of like, cautiously coming and thinking what these people are doing. They're not regular theorists and all that. We're not regular theorists. We're artists, we're painters, we're writers. Professor Mohanty writes poetry, do you all know? All right? all kinds of things we are multitasking, not multitasking is a very bad word, multiple functioning, multiple being that we practice ourselves as human beings. So if we want to expand ourselves or the way we used to do it at DCRC, we will have to have a different kind of venue and different kind of funding. The funding is also very restricted. It's tailored in such a way that we would be able to feed our friends who come, and we'll be able to have a space where we can sit. This is all. But at least we've managed to do this. Hard times. I have to also make one more point before I end.
Yeah.
Life is becoming very hard for people like us, for creative theorists. In a very strange manner, a new political structure is emerging which believes in defining things and not interpretation. It's a very authoritarian way of defining as to who we are, what our nationalities are. So when we began to conceptualize Indian political theory, you do not know. We took 3 months to create that concept note because we don't want to be misunderstood. I think that when I invoke my identity as an Indian person, I think instantly and simultaneously that I'm a woman, that I'm a Bihari, that I speak Hindi, that I speak a little bit French, I speak English, all the multiplicity of things that part of my being constantly. So how can I simply accept that I'm a Hindu woman living in a territory defined as India or whatever, which is also contested by the way. So अभी बहुत मुश्किल है, और इस मुश्किल में मेरा मानना है कि आर क्रिएटिव थियरी इज़ अ वंडरफुल बोट, जिसमें हम सब बैठे हैं and we can sail through. I have no, if we remain the way I'm trying to explain, if we accept and own our multiplicity and our contextual मतलब ये context भी कोई unifying context नहीं है. If we accept all of that, it is possible for us to still survive. But if you agree with whatever is being forced upon you, you will probably land up dead. This is my understanding as a theorist, obviously as a theorist. So, sir, whatever next time when we do, we will make sure that we have different kind of people also coming in. Right?
Okay, and that was not the concluding statement. We still have, can we, because we started at 3:30, this is supposed to be a 2-hour session instead of 3. So, can we continue for another?
We can continue till 5:30.
Remain brief because people are waiting for chai and samosa. So, and I was not ready to share my reflections.
Yeah.
But I would start with anecdote, and this is Creative Theory Colloquium. And I remember when I was a kid in kindergarten, I used to go to my school, and they wanted us to be creative because they thought that if a kid is not creative, their mental ability will not progress or won't develop. So what they used to do is they used to give us some clays and used to ask us to make something out of it. And whatever you make out of it is creative, and that's the creativity for a kid. And attending this colloquium for 3 days reminds me of those days, because in last 2.5 days, what this forum has done for us is to give us those clays, so that as a student, when we go back to our home, we can make something out of it. So that's how I see this colloquium. And I think Vivek very beautifully summarized in 3 set of questions that what he's taking away from this and what have been the discussion point for the last 3 days. But I also have some added questions that I am taking away, and I will be going back and thinking more about it. And one of the first questions that I'm taking away is crisis. And we have been talking about crisis for 3 days, and I think it started with Rajiv Bhargava when he started with more pessimistic point, and what he talked about is that he is disappointed with what's happening. So the crisis we have been talking about a lot, and then second kind of crisis was discussed during Professor Banerjee's session is the climate and planetary crisis. So I'll be going back and thinking about what is the crisis and what makes a crisis, because repeatedly we have been talking about what's happening with democratic structure in India. This republic itself is in crisis. So I'll be going back and thinking about this crisis. The second set of questions I'll be going back is what is Indian about in political theory, and again Vivek and others summarize it very well. So what I'm still going back and thinking about is that what makes Indian political theory, because those 200 years of colonization and then 75, 80 years of post-colonial, what Indian is left there to think about Indian political theory? So I'll be going back and thinking about that. And it was very interesting when Professor Mahajan talked about what's in response to Hilal's point that what's the difference between opinion and theory. So I'll be going ahead and thinking about what's the difference between thought, opinion, and theory, and think about it more. But one of the interesting questions that I will be going back with is about modernity. And yesterday, I think somebody raised the question that modernity provided us, even though they provided us an institution that exploit, but also gave us the language and grammar so that we can express what's exploitation and all these things. So I'll be going back and thinking about the relationship between modernity and tradition. I have more set of questions, but I will not be talking about that because people are waiting for it. But the last question that I'll be going back is the relationship between Indian political theory and local. So, because Vivek, you also talked about it, about we need to develop our own political theory, and then we can think more about universalism. But first, we need to understand ourselves better, more localized and more local Indian political theory. So someday we might have Punjab political theory, or we don't have space for that. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Satish. Yeah, Satish, please. Satish Jha, one of the veterans. I'll just. Oh, sorry.
In fact, I was hiding here. I thought that I received. Perhaps on. It's not working? No, I think.
सर थोड़ा सा जोर बोलना कि को माइक नहीं लाया ना।
ये नहीं चल रहा है
ना, अब बोलते रहे।
Which one? This one?
नहीं ये तो चल रहा था।
ये भी नहीं चल रहा। वो चल रहा है वो।
हाँ?
लगता है मुझे आज बचना है, कुछ नहीं चल रहा है यहाँ।
आवाज़ थोड़ी धीमी हो गई है। सर स्टार्ट।
काम ही नहीं कर रहा। Anyway.
हाँ ठीक है सर।
इनफैक्ट मेरे पास बहुत कुछ कहने का नहीं है, जो था मैंने कल। हाँ मैं नहीं ऑन हो रहा है ना, इस पर साउंड सिस्टम चाह रहा मैं नहीं बोलूँ। Anyway, so I think that now I'll be audible. I was just saying that whatever I had to say, I already said yesterday. But since Professor Mohanty has called me, so I can't say no to him. Yeah. So I mean, just 2-3 quick points I would like to issues I would like to flag. One thing which Professor Mahajan perhaps hinted yesterday, that I mean, what type of anxiety basically is plaguing us, particularly when we do Indian political theory. Which is not that Indian political theory has started with political theory, I mean Creative Theory Colloquium. People have been doing it over the years. The anxiety is, in fact, what Gopal Guru often says, swapping in seconds. So are we swapping in seconds? I mean, simply reprocessing what is already, given to us from the West? Or are we reflecting on our own situation, dealing with our own challenges, and from that is some argument emerging, which has some, universal acceptability or relevance? Because unless, something rises above a highly local, particular, and at least reaches the stage of universal, I don't think it can be called theory. So that is one thing. Now, of course, what we have been arguing here through creative theory, that universal we don't have to reject. The only thing is that what type of universal we have to engage with or create. And the argument is that it has to be a negotiated universality. And that negotiation through dialogue, that is multiple particulars have to be factored in that universal. And that should be, the basis of our, theorization. Now, of course, this false universality that Vivek, mentioned, that is true. Because what has happened, that, sometimes two things happen. Either you do a wholesale rejection of the West, which is done even now, it was done earlier also. Another is no wholesale rejection, but creative engagement. And that is basically this negotiated universality, that whatever we can contribute. For example, today's in context, we have a lot of resources, traditional indigenous resources in India, but we can't understand with our resources this entire, process and phenomenon called capitalism. Capital, Indian text, Indian discourses from ancient to present, could be some historical regions. There were moments of breakthrough, but didn't materialize. Science and technology, Dharampal yesterday, he came the 16th century, that book and other things. But somehow that breakthrough didn't happen, and we didn't witness that moment of birth of capitalism. Many people say that Chanakya's Arthashastra, came to light in 20th century. People became aware about it quite late. But the Chanakya's Arthashastra has many things, but doesn't have the same rigorous analysis of capital as Marx's Capital 3 volumes will give you. So we can't today do without, engaging with the West. Many things. Just I'm giving one example of. Yesterday, I think Maninder mentioned that Jainism has a very profound idea of capital, but there is no alienation. If there is no alienation, then there is no capitalism. If there is no alienation, then there is no accumulation and circulation, and that circuit of capital will not happen. So therefore, the Jainism is deficient on that count. So I think that in today's context, we cannot understand capitalism without engaging with the West. And that's why the Chanakya's Arthashastra is very profound in many respects. But I think that we cannot, ignore that without Marx's understanding of capitalism and capital, we cannot make sense in today's context. That is number one, that how this negotiated universality matters. Now the second thing, and then of course, there is a catch here. We are basically sandwiched between two things. This Sanatani dehumanized inegalitarianism of Indian, discourse. And another is this Western dehumanized capitalism. So therefore, this liberation thing becomes important, that how you can meander your way in between by, bringing certain issues for emancipation and liberation. Now, the second is the concepts. Because normally in political theory, we speak through concepts. But in fact, Randhir Singh used to say that two types of concepts are concepts which reveal the truth, there are concepts which conceal the truth. And he often used to add that those concepts are normally popular which conceal the truth. So therefore, the concepts become important. Now, when we do Indian theory, that means building our theories on basis of our own challenges, our own situation, our own location, then do the concepts which we borrow, do they help us in speaking out or, or negotiating with the challenges or explaining it. So concepts become important. For example, Samaj, Jati, Kul, Bans, all of them are not only denominator of a social reality. They also act as a concept. I have used multiple uses of the term Samaj. And I remember Mayawati, when she became Chief Minister in 2007, the press conference, he was introducing all leaders and he says, is this caste? Is Samaj se aa rahe hain ye? So there it became caste. But then Samaj is also the larger thing. So I mean, these concepts which are basically used day in and day out by us here in India, those concepts how come to our theorization. That is another major issue. The third thing is this authenticity. I think that Dhananjay was raising. Authenticity issue, very frequently, gets tied to the question of culture. So therefore, can there be any other way? One, of course, authenticity you trace with this relationship with liberation and emancipation. That anything which helps in promoting that idea, which can liberate, emancipate, that can be considered authentic. Not necessarily it has to be something from culture. So this authenticity we also have to discuss more rigorously when we are doing Indian political theory. And finally, ideas and identity in Indian context become important. If we can separate the ideas of Heidegger from his identity as ideologue of fascism, why can't we do the similar thing with other such identities in Indian context? Because whether we are borrowing identity, ideas and identity as a wholesale borrowing, or at some level we can separate them. So therefore in Indian context this is also a challenge. And because India, the problem is that identities travel faster than ideas. In fact, this is a very popular joke that before someone is transferred, before his appointment letter reaches, his identity or her identity reaches before the appointment letter. So I mean that way. So I mean how identities and ideas have to be dealt with. So I think these are 3-4 issues I thought that I should flag.
Now let's go round. We will start from there. Yeah.
I'm from International Studies.
Okay.
I'm a second year PhD student. So I was listening to all this theoretical endeavor, and something came to my mind that there are 3 meta-theoretical questions that becomes very crucial in any theoretical endeavor, which needs to be answered. For example, number 1 is a question regarding the ontology, then epistemology and methodology. When it comes to ontology, it is basically about what exists. If we are talking about the political settings, so what exists politically? Because if we do not have any kind of ontological consensus, there is going to be paradigmatic divergences in the words of Colin Eyre. For example, suppose you build your theory on the basis of caste. I could build my theory on the basis of some other angle, right? So we won't be conversing with each other, right? Yeah. The problem is not that simple. It's much deeper. For example, if your basis of theoretical construct is individualism, and I also take individualism as the basis of my theoretical construct, but there is going to be further issues with it. Your individualist person, that could be atomistic in Hobbesian sense, mine could be altruistic, who knows about the social welfare, right? So therefore we must do ontology, and this is what Alexander Wentz said. After ontology comes epistemology and methodology. These are also very important because epistemology is basically about what are the conditions to know what that exists, right? Because okay. So I wanted to first talk about these things because I was coming to the one question which is actually an epistemological question. The question regarding the 2 traditions of foundationalist traditions and anti-foundationalist traditions. In this entire debate of endeavor to construct Indian political theory, where do we place Indian political theory in the foundationalist tradition or anti-foundationalist tradition? Because the problem lies in both. And even if you say that no, we don't need foundations or anti-foundations, but at the same time we can sail through our ship of rationality, then rationality itself is challenged, especially when we talk about a nation, it's God is dead. So if one could clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yeah.
So I wanted to very quickly voice two anxieties that I'm sure are not personal neuroses. They must be widely felt among students, but clearly were not all beset by them, so I'm hopeful you can resolve them. The first anxiety is about this self-definitional urge. So we've said that the Republic is in crisis, universities are in crisis, at a deeper level, the practice of reading and thoughtfully thinking are in crisis. And therefore we have to reimagine and renew our understanding of what Indian political thought is. But at the same time, I feel it's important to acknowledge that when you are in a siege like that, there is a tendency to focus a lot on the one thing you can control, which is how you define yourself, and overindulging in that urge, while in fact ignoring the projects that await us once we settle on an identity. And maybe there's a magic moment in the life of a scholar where you develop restraint and you stop obsessing that way, but the student posture is to obsess. So I was hoping somebody would have thoughts on how you develop that restraint and when this gets cloying for you. Second anxiety that I wanted to flag is, when do we move from the question of what is Indian political theory to what is good Indian political theory? Because at a certain point, all of this conversation needs to translate into pedagogic and community standards that we use to teach our students and hold each other accountable. And I'm wondering sociologically, when does that come? Because we need to train many generations of people to carry on this project.
Could you make it short?
So I'm done actually. Those are my two anxieties. I hope someone can resolve.
Okay. Quick. Yeah.
Make it quick, huh? Not.
ये 3 दिनों का जो बौद्धिक चिंतन था उसका अनुभव काफ़ी अच्छा रहा। कुछ रिमार्क्स नहीं, सबसे पहले थैंक यू इस सेशन को ऑर्गेनाइज करने के लिए और इस सेशन को ओपन रखने के लिए, विदाउट एनी फी, विदाउट एनी रेस्ट्रिक्शन। ये बहुत भद्र लोकेशन है और यहाँ पे बहुत सारे भद्र लोग मिलकर पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी के बारे में
भद्र लोग
उसमें बहुत सारी बातें हुई। मैं 3 दिन बैठकर सुनता रहा। जेएनयू की मुनीरका से बातें हुई कि जेएनयू से आप बाहर निकलते तो मुनीरका में अलग माहौल है। फिर बातें हुई आज की हम लोग कितने लोगों तक पहुंच पा रहे हैं। मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि आप लोग बहुत लोगों तक पहुंच रहे हैं, क्योंकि मनिंदर सर की बात से मैं बिल्कुल एग्री करता हूं कि यूनिवर्सिटी जो है वो ट्रांजिशन फेज में है। अब वो यूनिवर्सिटी वो नहीं रही जो पहले रहा करती थी। जो भद्रता यहाँ पर है, जो बौद्धिक आतंकवाद यहाँ पर है, वो बौद्धिक आतंकवाद का स्तर खत्म हो रहा है। आज यूनिवर्सिटी में जब प्रोफेसर बोलता है कि या बोलते हैं कि पीडीएस का जो चावल है वो खाने लायक नहीं होता है, तो पीछे से एक बच्चा खड़ा होकर बोलता है कि हम वही चावल खाते हैं। तो देयर इज अ ट्रांजिशन, और वो पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी में भी नजर आएगा और नजर आना शुरू हो चुका है। जब मैं सुन रहा हूँ कि शिव चर्चा एक ऐसे मुद्दे पर भी पीएचडी थीसिस हो रहा है, तो आई वांट प्रोफेसर्स की इस स्पेस को और ओपन करें और इंक्लूसिव करें। जो कैनन्स आपने बनाए हैं उस कैनन्स को आप तोड़े और बच्चे को जो युगेंद्र जी की जो फर्स्ट सेशन थी उसमें से जो सबसे मूलभूत बात थी कि हमें क्वेश्चंस ढूंढना है, ये नहीं कि हमें सोल्यूशन ढूंढना है। सोल्यूशन ढूंढ के फिर क्वेश्चंस हम ढूंढते हैं, उस तरीके से नहीं करना है। तो हम लोग जो नए जनरेशन के बच्चे हैं, जो नए बच्चे हैं, उनके पास बहुत सारे आइडियाज हैं जो उनके पास से है, उनके लोग से है, उनके ट्रेडिशन से हैं। बहुत सारी अच्छी चीज़ें भी हो रही हैं जब बुरा समय है, लेकिन उस बुरा समय में बहुत कुछ अच्छा भी हो रहा है। तो वी नीड टू बी पॉजिटिव अबाउट इट। फिर मॉडर्निटी की बात है कि मॉडर्निटी जो है वो दिस है। मॉडर्निटी जैसे कि अजय गुडवर्ती सर ने भी कहा कि मॉडर्निटी वायलेंस करता है, लेकिन उस वायलेंस को डिफाइन करने का भी एक माध्यम है मॉडर्निटी। तो मॉडर्निटी गिव्स अस अ स्पेस, हम जैसे लोगों के लिए और सब लोगों के लिए स्पेस देता है कि वो लिबरेट हो। तो वही चीज़ है, आप उसको कविराज के भाषा में कहें या किसी और भाषा में कहें या किसी और ऑथर के भाषा में कहें, लेकिन मॉडर्निटी जो है उसको पूरी तरीके से नकार भी नहीं सकते हैं, मॉडर्निटी के साथ इंगेज करना है। मधुलिका मैम की बात करें तो फ्लोइवर्स के आइडियाज़ हैं, लोकल आइडियाज़ को आगे बढ़ाएं, लेकिन साथ में कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म आखिरकार मॉडर्निटी का ही तो आउटपुट है, लेकिन उस आउटपुट के साथ भी किस तरीके से हमें मैनेज करना है। तो मार्जिनिटी हो, डिफरेंस हो, कितनी सारी चीज़ों को हमने डिफाइन किया। तो ये बौद्धिक चिंतन कहीं ना कहीं ये प्रोडक्टिव है, और जो लोग बोल रहे हैं कि ये समय खराब चल रहा है या हमें बहुत मेहनत लगी, आई थैंक ऑल ऑफ देम। आपका जो मेहनत है, आपका जो कंट्रीब्यूशन है, अगर किसी एक तक भी पहुंचता है तो वो बहुत आगे तक जाएगा। थैंक यू सो मच।
थैंक यू। तो यहाँ बौद्धिक मुक्तिवाद है। Can we now go to
one brief comment on Professor?
Hold on.
Okay, just 1 minute, then Gurpreet Mahajan. Okay, yeah, speak.
So when you said that what sort of attitude we must have towards Western political theory, and then on the second question you said that the very pre-understanding of practitioner is not theory per se. I just would like to add that political theory theorizes on values, judgments, opinions, but that pre-understanding or the understanding of the practitioner is what should we call knowledge, and that should be a subject of theory. And if we theorize on it, then if we follow Kaviraj, I think any knowledge, whatever we will get from it, will be contextual in nature. And once we have defined the contextual knowledges, then we can go up to the analytical level. And once we have then those analytical tools, we can then philosophize. And then can reach to a level of, say, what kind of theory we are heading towards. And then can talk about what kind of universalism is it. Is it flawed universalism? Is it relational universalism? Or is it a negotiating?
Okay. Thank you. Gurpreet Mahajan.
Thank you so much. I think I want to say first, thank you to the organizers for this general feast. Lots of thoughts, lots of things to take back. And what I learned really, before I talk about political theory or one or two things about it, is that I think that whatever you want to say, political theory is in good hands and it is still elitist. And I'm okay with it. Because people are taking that, it's elite in the sense that people are using very complex terminologies, concepts, but they're also innovating those concepts. They're also giving them new meanings. So that's interesting, but judging from that standard, Professor Mohanty, I'm still at the stage of being a slave. And a slave in a double sense. I have yet to aspire for that sort of creativity. I'm also a slave for a different sense. That one thing, and I'm a slave to theory because it has taught me one thing, and that is that we all try to make sense of our world, and we may be right, doing it rightly or wrongly, that's not the thing. We try to make sense of the world. Theory pushes me to say, is the way I'm making sense of the world making sense to another person distant from me? Are they able to understand that sense? And is that sense the same? It's the struggle. This is what theory is, no matter who does it, when, where, etc., etc. I'm interested, and I would sort of urge, I want to say something about genuine elite, but wo baad mein. So, I'm interested in this also because the word concept has come many times. But I think underlying that idea of concept is the fact that we are looking for ideas that are embedded. Because we are looking also for systems of thought, ways of thinking, ways of looking, wherever they are coming from. And they can come from multiple sources. And that's where the plurality will come in. So I think we need to move from concepts and so on and so forth to something in terms of world of ideas, which push you in some direction or the other. And when it comes to that, I think there are, I would urge that there is often in one's own life and maybe others are better than me, I am willing to concede that, there is often a disconnect between the things you are wanting to bring together, being, thinking, knowing. It's completely being ruptured all the time, and I think it's a good thing. It's a very good thing, and I don't want to only think the theory in terms of understanding, and that is why I go to thought, wherever it is, in whatever field I find, because that thought gives me a vision, and that's the difference. It gives me a vision as to what I can aspire for beyond what I understand, and what other people are saying, and maybe it inspires me, maybe it will inspire other people. In this, I think in my 40 years of trying to teach at least courses dealing with some of these things, I realized that we had no clue as to how we should train kare. We just did not know how we can do political thought and theory. And we did it completely wrong. And I can say it with great confidence now. One of the things I learned after about 30 years and my first visit and interaction with people outside India who were doing political thought and theory is that this was for them a reflection on life. Not narrowly defined just state and government, it's a reflection of life as an individual. Individual's relationship, if I use some other terms, family, samaj kaho, community, state, other people, groups, and so on and so forth. And we could not do that. We thought of political thought, whether it is Gandhi or it is Aurobindo or it is, Plato, they were always fixed theory of, concept of. But we just couldn't get to the totality of that vision or that idea and how it connects and how it was connecting with the way we should be thinking about our lives and planning to do our lives. And that's why I think it's very important. Professor Mohanty, I want to just insert something in what you said about creativity. There are two elements to it. I think creativity and creative theory came after a lot of struggle at various other things first. If we just give free play to ourselves and say I can be creative and I will be creative, wo jaise clay wala tha example, I think it's a very good example, then I don't know what I'm doing, whether I'm destroying, I'm creating or whatever. There's a lot of struggle. And I think the best analogy to my mind of thinking about it is to say like you train in music. First you learn what others are doing, how they are doing, what are the implications, what they can do in it and not in it. And that's where all these thought and theory comes in. Then creativity comes in. Otherwise there may be no difference. And I may be too much, because everyone is nowadays creative and they have potential to be creative, no problem with that. But we can't make a distinction of which direction it is headed and what it's doing. That is why I urge. And lastly, I have no aspiration of universalism for theory or thought or for myself. I am settling for conversation, and I want to thank the organizers, because one of the attractions of coming to the 2-day seminar is to listen. Listening is most critical to doing theory. This is what I learned. Because this is when you confront a concrete other who is going to resist the way you think. We're going to think differently, and my conversation begins when I take that thought seriously and say, okay, I can now need to make some change in the way I'm thinking. That's conversation. Whether it becomes universal or not, I think if we can achieve conversation of this kind between ourselves, with the rest of the world, I think theory would be in good hands and successful in India. So thank you.
Just 1 minute on that.
Yeah. You give me the hardest job. 1 minute when I anyway.
I don't know how to pull this out.
In some ways I disagree with this wanting to ignore the binary between modern Western thought and Indian thought. I think the binary we really have is between modern Western thought, which is a regime of the elite. Globally, a regime that we have
a situation has come where we cannot ignore it. It determines the structure of our university, the structure of our syllabi, and it truly is the elephant in the room. It determines what we think of our science, religion, and politics. So no pluriverse will be possible accepting that. And that is why none of these other traditions really come to be discussed as mainstream university syllabi. So, even Gandhi is not part of the mainstream in political theory. Second, I wanted to say is that we underestimate the public. Mainly to Hilal, my response. I think. No, sorry. No, I think. No, I think when we think that they cannot theorize and that they cannot understand theory in a sense.
This is about pre-understanding.
Not pre-understanding. Now, let me just have at least be able to conclude what I have started. So I think the issue is when we talk of people's theory, the issue is the separation or the contradiction between the regime of modern Western political theory and self-governance, our capacity for that. And that is the one reason why we are talking of Indian political theory. It need not be called Indian. I would like to call it self-governance and the possibility of that. And as we know, that is what we mean by Swaraj, though it has been talked of disparagingly sometimes in this 2 days. In some ways, yes. Just one final word about this. I just want to, in the past few years, instances where we could not respond as intellectuals to main crisis. The first that I could think of was Sanjukta Panigrahi applying for a dancer job at the Konark temple. Both the traditionalists and the secular or liberal people involved, whether they were bureaucrats or others, both of them balked at this application. And both felt, one felt that it was degrading tradition, the other felt that it was degrading modernity and its understanding of feminism. So this is what we are caught between when we cannot understand the people and we don't have a theory for the people. Ayurveda during the COVID thing, how it was treated. We don't need to bring in the specific practitioners, but as a system, how it was treated. And that is why I'm saying you cannot have pluriverse or talk of it except as a curiosity in the university, and you cannot mainstream it if you have accepted this regime. The Santara voluntary death was considered illegal. The Jallikattu is not discussed beyond the obvious goriness of the situation. I'm not saying that you should not change these customs, but there needs to be due attention intellectually, and not due attention to the incident of that, but to the foundations of those possibilities, the epistemological, metaphysical. And finally, I think the fact that we cannot understand or we are unable to respond in an effective way to Hindu-Muslim clashes. I think this is a huge failing of the Indian polity, that the intellectuals have not been, and this has to do with the modern Western regime that defines our way of thinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know a lot of people have a lot of ideas, but